By 1864, the war had not gone well for the North. President Abraham Lincoln's army had achieved few major victories over the Confederates. The president needed a winner. General Ulysses S. Grant had been successful in the Western theater. In March 1864, President Lincoln appointed Grant General-in-Chief of all United States armies, the first time in U.S. history that so much military power was vested in one man. He was a hands-on commander, so naturally he chose the field rather than Washington for his headquarters. His primary objective: defeat General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. His strategy: apply pressure everywhere possible throughout the South and eventually destroy the Confederate armies. To defeat Lee, Grant accompanied Major General George G. Meade's Army of the Potomac into central Virginia. They would push south from the Rapidan River and bring Lee's army to battle. The Federal Army's overwhelming numbers and superior supply capability should ensure victory. Such was not the case. In a little over a month, 3 major battles were fought with appalling casualties, and Lee's army was still intact. After the third Union defeat at Cold Harbor, Grant decided to move his army south of the James River and attack Petersburg. 4 days of fighting failed to capture the city, and a siege began. On June 15, 1864, Grant arrived at City Point, Virginia. He established headquarters on the east lawn of the Epps family home, Appomattox. Tents served as quarters during the summer and fall months. Here he had ready communications with the field and observed military operations firsthand. Strategically located at the confluence of the James and Appomattox rivers, the site provided easy water communication with Fort Monroe, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. The deep water channel near shore allowed supplies to be brought up the James River directly to City Point. From here, they were transported via the City Point Railroad and wagon trains to the rear of the Union Army at Petersburg. Grant believed that if he could cut the rail lines leading to Petersburg, Lee would be forced to evacuate both Petersburg and Richmond. Without sufficient supplies, Lee's fighting capacity would be severely restricted, and Grant would force the war to an end. Within a few weeks, City Point became the largest supply base ever constructed in the field during the war, and for 10 months was one of the busiest ports in the world. The wharves teemed with activity. Steamers and barges crowded the docks. Several thousand black workers, many of them former slaves, unloaded food, ammunition, and other vital war supplies. According to Chief Quartermaster Rufus Ingalls, about 40 steamers, 75 sailing vessels, and over 100 barges could be seen in the rivers on an average day. 8 wharves covered more than 350,000 square feet and extended over a half-mile along the James River. At least 1,500 tons of supplies were unloaded every day. There were warehouses capable of storing enough food to feed 100,000 men for 30 days and 65,000 animals for 20 days. Railroad spurs led to various wharves, the bakery, and the General Depot Field Hospital. An engine house, machine shop, car repair shop, and turntable allowed the trains to run without interruption. As Union lines extended to the south and west of Petersburg, so did the military railroad. Trestles spanned swamps and streams. Supply stations were built behind each Army Corps. Sidings were added for unloading and distributing supplies. The trains delivered an average of 1,400 tons of food, weapons, ammunition, and uniforms each day. By the end of the siege, nearly 22 miles of track had been laid, and more than 280 buildings were constructed by the U.S. Military Railroad Construction Corps. There were 4 military hospitals and 3 civilian hospitals at City Point. The largest and most famous was the Depot Field Hospital, where 1,200 tents accommodated 10,000 patients. Each patient had his own bed and wash basin and regularly received clean pillows and linens. In winter, 90 log barracks replaced the tents. Medical supplies were received at the hospital wharf built on the Appomattox River, and seriously wounded troops embarked from here for northern hospitals. 2 civilian relief organizations provided supplemental aid to the Union soldiers. One of these, the U.S. Sanitary Commission, in the words of a contemporary, distributed food, clothing, and all needed comfort when the government supplies are insufficient or delayed. They also provided writing materials, tobacco, pipes, and other luxury items. Sanitary Commission agents helped with patients in the Depot Field Hospital, and sometimes assisted in burying the dead. The U.S. Christian Commission also distributed supplies and worked in the hospitals. However, this organization was primarily devoted to fostering religion and morality in the Union Army. One of the busiest establishments at City Point was the U.S. Government Bakery, with a daily production of over 100,000 loaves of bread. Quartermaster repair shops employed over 1,600 wheelwrights, carpenters, blacksmiths, saddlers, teamsters, laborers, and clerks. Sutlers, civilian merchants who had government contracts, provided a valuable service to each regiment. Here, the soldiers bought luxury items, which were not provided by the Army. Union troops accused of crimes were imprisoned at the Bull Ring, a place so bad that one Union officer, who had been a prisoner of the Confederates at Richmond, said he would rather be confined in Libby prison for 6 months than in the Bull Ring for 1. Captured Confederate soldiers were transported to prison camps in the north. City Point was safe compared to the battlefront. But just before noon on August 9, 1864, a tremendous explosion rocked the waterfront with a force so great, said one witness, as to make it seem as if the earth was tearing to pieces. Artillery shells, timbers, and human remains were hurled a half-mile in every direction. When it was over, nearly half of the 400-foot wharf was destroyed. 43 men were killed and 126 wounded. The Kendrick, a barge moored at the Ordnance Wharf and loaded with 80,000 pounds of black powder, had blown up. Some believed the explosion was the result of sabotage. Others thought the improper handling of ammunition was the cause. The truth was not known until after the war. John Maxwell, a Confederate Secret Service agent, described in a report how he had planted a time bomb on a powder barge. As field headquarters of the U.S. Army, City Point attracted a number of important leaders. The most famous was President Abraham Lincoln. On the evening of March 24, 1865, the President and Mrs. Lincoln and their son Tad arrived at City Point. Lincoln spent the next 15 days touring the front, visiting the hospitals, and reviewing troops. On March 28th, he held a council of war with Grant, General William T. Sherman, and Admiral David D. Porter. The end of the war was imminent. Lincoln told his subordinates that he wanted lenient terms of surrender for all the Confederate armies. The nation must be allowed to heal its wounds and reunite. Petersburg and Richmond fell on April 3, 1865. The significance of the City Point logistical operation cannot be overstated. An army which can supply itself will not be easily defeated. The Federals were able to supply their army and simultaneously cut off supply lines to Southern forces. Both sides knew the collapse of the Confederacy was at hand. Nearly a year before, Robert E. Lee told General Jubal A. Early, "We must destroy this army of Grant's before he gets to the James River. If he gets there, it will become a siege, and then it will be a mere question of time." Lee's prophecy had come to pass.